then I was working as a PA for somebody at one of the little comics companies here, and Neil Gaiman came in and said, oh listen, Alan's just moved in on his own because he and his wife had broken up, and Neil said, you two, I think, talked about doing something together or something, and he said, hey, well, give him a call, you know. And so I called Alan, and we got together, and we had both been asked by this young woman to work on a comic called Shangri-La. We'd each been asked to do an 8-page story for it was supposed to be an erotic comic. And so I came up to Northampton from London and visited him for a weekend, and we just kind of brainstormed, and during that time we talked about all sorts of stuff, a lot about our own beliefs and stuff, you know, how we felt that pornography had been let down in terms of its relationship to art, and it was despised, much like comics and stuff like that. Anyway, so we couldn't really think of an 8-pager, but what happened was I was talking about, well, I know I had a really good time when I wrote a little comic about 3 sisters who end up getting married, and I said, I really like stories about 3 girls. And so Alan said, 3 girls, and he said, redhead, blonde, and brunette, yeah, and before long he said, right, if Alice in Wonderland has blonde hair, and Dorothy from Wizard of Oz has red hair, and Wendy from Peter Pan has dark hair, how old would each of them have been if they could have all met somewhere? And he figured out the ages, that if they had actually lived in real time, at the time the stories were being written, that Dorothy would have been about 24, Alice would have been about, late 50s, and Wendy would have been in her mid-30s. We found out about a little place called Lake Constance, which is in the border between France, Germany, and Switzerland, and it has a semi-tropical environment where you can actually grow pineapples. And he said, how about if they meet at a hotel? And it went off from there, and it just got more brilliant the more we talked about it. And before long, we weren't going to be doing an 8-page story. We ended up deciding we were going to do a 240-page book, and it was going to be the panacea for the rift between art and pornography. We were going to make them sound like something that had really happened to them, and you would also see the little bits of it that weren't in the children's stories, obviously, because it was a different point of view. There was a different sort of message being told here. This was the background information. This was the stuff that affected them as human beings. We were treating them as human beings instead of as sexual symbols or as symbols of nostalgic childhood. We were showing up the sort of sexual underworld that's a part of every young person's burgeoning consciousness. And I suppose in a lot of what Lost Girls is about, it's the melding of the idea that sexuality is not separate from our awareness and our response to the world, but is an integral part of us. If we are joyous, that reflects in our sexuality, because that's part of us. If we're romantic, if we're fun-loving, or conversely, if we're full of shadows, if we're ashamed, if we're cruel, if sex for us is about power rather than about affection and nurturing and good times and playing. It's been the power side of it which has been producing all the magazines. He has power, she has none. She has power, he has none. In proper play, everyone is empowered. In proper play, no one is stripped bare of anything. And I was very aware, as a female, I had a crucial role to play in Lost Girls, because what I wanted to make it was something that I would love. And this is for the end papers of the first volume of the 3 volumes of Lost Girls. And the art style is taken from Leon Bakst's work with a Russian ballet, but there are characters. There's Wendy, and there's Dorothy, and there's Alice, and I've taken costume ideas and changed them a bit. Invented that one, and kind of invented that. This one's taken more literally, and I've recolored them and things. But there's a lot of sort of synthesized art in here, sort of copying of famous artists' work in a sort of pornographic manner, and so that's what this was about, is just sort of it's an image of the three of them in their own idealized theatrical mode as three different sort of Russian dancers. I've looked at fashions a lot because I'm always fascinated with clothing and what it says about culture. And I must say that we've reached a really ugly time with clothing. Girls are not wearing things that flatter them and make them look more beautiful. They look like trailer trash. All their least wonderful qualities are sort of squished forward into kind of really cheesy looking, I don't know, I suppose that there's a frankness to it, but it's not casual. Everybody looks very uncomfortable. They're wearing tight little squeezy boots. The skirts are so short that, I mean, there's too much showing to general strangers, and it's not in a kind of the way girls are carrying themselves. It's not like they feel free to do that. It's like they're doing it because, well, that's the fashion. The thing is, I think girls are even more excruciatingly aware of what they feel is wrong with their bodies than they ever were, because there are so many cosmetic companies, pharmaceutical companies, health farms, magazines. We all know it. We've heard it to death. We all know guys and girls who are completely freaked out about their bodies.